So when I say Sparta, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably King Leonidas, right? The 300 warriors. But today, we're going to look past the battlefield. We're going to uncover the story of the women who were the true, hidden foundation of all that Spartan power.
Because that's the real question, isn't it? The entire Spartan state, this whole massive war machine, was built to produce the world's greatest soldiers. And you know what? That process didn't start in some training barracks. It started with the women. And the way they did it, it was unlike anything else in the ancient world.
You see, Sparta wasn't just a city. It was a radical social experiment. And the whole thing was built on one core and, frankly, pretty shocking principle. But why? Why go to such extremes? Well, it all comes down to fear. The Spartan warrior class was tiny, and they were sitting on top of a huge population of state-owned slaves, the helots, who they treated brutally. So their entire society was basically a military base, designed 24/7 to prevent a massive bloody revolt. And that meant they had to engineer the perfect soldier, generation after generation.
The modern word for this is eugenics. And for the Spartans, this wasn't some abstract idea. It was state policy. The guy who supposedly wrote their laws, like Lycurgus, believed children weren't the private property of their parents. No way. They were the common property of the state. Their only job was to grow up strong enough to defend Sparta and keep the helots in line. Their quality was literally Sparta's #1 priority.
And just how obsessed were they? I mean, really obsessed. The ancient historian Xenophon, who was a big admirer of Sparta, mentions the goal of producing healthy or admirable children 6 times in one short little passage. 6 times! This wasn't a side hustle for them, it was the entire point of their society. A society built for constant war, mostly with the people they'd enslaved.
So here's the crucial part. If you want strong children, the Spartans reasoned, well, you've got to have strong mothers first. And this one simple idea led them to completely shatter all the rules of the Greek world when it came to women.
The difference is just, it's night and day. In a place like Athens, a respectable woman was kept indoors, doing quiet stuff like weaving, kept on a restricted diet. But Spartan women? They were outside. They were training, competing in wrestling and running, and they were eating to build up their strength. And this wasn't just for fun, it was their civic duty. They had to create a strong vessel for the next generation of Spartan warriors.
Okay, so as you can probably imagine, if their training was that unconventional, their approach to marriage was, well, it was downright bizarre. You can just forget about romance or personal connection. In Sparta, marriage was a function of the state. It was about one thing and one thing only, making more Spartans.
And this ritual just shows you how strange it all was. According to the historian Plutarch, the wedding was a kind of staged kidnapping. The bride gets her head shaved and she's dressed in men's clothes. Then, the groom, totally sober, has to sneak out of his army barracks, be with her in secret, and then sneak back before anyone notices. They lived in so much secrecy that some couples apparently had kids before they had ever even seen each other's faces in the daylight. Just think about that.
And this focus on results went even further. If an older husband had a young, strong wife, he was actually encouraged to find a younger, more fit man to father her children. An unmarried guy could even ask a husband for permission to have a child with his wife if she was known for having strong babies. The goal wasn't fidelity to a person, it was a service to the state's gene pool.
And nothing captures this mindset better than this quote. As King Leonidas was leaving for that famous battle at Thermopylae, a battle he knew he wasn't coming back from, his wife Gorgo asked him what she should do. His reply wasn't about mourning him or protecting his memory. It was just simple, practical advice. Marry another good man and keep producing good children for Sparta. Her duty wasn't to him, it was to the state.
Now, you might be thinking this all sounds incredibly progressive, maybe even liberating in a way. The historian Xenophon certainly thought so. But not everybody agreed. The great philosopher Aristotle, for instance, he looked at this whole system and saw it not as a strength but as Sparta's fatal flaw.
Aristotle was writing when Sparta's power was already fading, and he basically argued that their lawgiver, like Lycurgus, had made a huge mistake. He'd created all these tough rules for the men, but he'd completely ignored the women. In Aristotle's view, they lived these lives of luxury and uncontrolled freedom. He even went so far as to claim that Sparta was essentially ruled by women, and that this imbalance was a direct cause of its downfall.
But we have to ask, right? Was Aristotle seeing the reality on the ground, or was he just seeing it through his own very Athenian-tinted glasses? In his city, Athens, women were kept inside, totally controlled. So to him,
A Spartan woman who could own her own land, speak her mind in public, and wrestle with the boys? Well, she would have looked dangerously, unnaturally free. What he called weakness, a Spartan might have just called strength.
And that right there brings us to the biggest challenge in understanding Spartan women. We're trying to see them through what historians call the Spartan mirage, this distorted view created by just a handful of ancient writers, none of whom, by the way, were actually Spartan women.
I mean, just look at our main sources. You've got Xenophon, who is a total fanboy. He paints this perfect, idealized picture. Then you have Aristotle, who's a critic, actively looking for flaws to explain why Sparta failed. And then there's Plutarch, who's writing over 500 years later. His account might be completely romanticized. They all contradict each other. They're all outsiders, telling us not what Spartan women were, but what they represented to the rest of the Greek world.
So in the end, we're left with this fascinating and totally unresolved question. Were these women liberated pioneers, enjoying freedoms that were just unheard of anywhere else in Greece? Or were they simply instruments of a brutal state, their bodies and their entire lives controlled for the sole purpose of breeding soldiers? The real answer is probably somewhere in the middle, lost forever in that historical mirage.